For most of human history, the scariest animal alive was probably another human. Not because they had claws, not because they had fangs. Somewhere in your family tree, going back far enough, is a creature that would absolutely terrify the modern version of you. A heavier jaw, a thick shelf of bone above the eyes, dense, powerful bones built for a world where violence was a daily survival skill. If one of your distant ancestors walked into a room today, your first instinct wouldn't be long-lost relative. It would be something much older and much quieter. Get away from that thing. And yet here you are. Smaller face, softer features, a brain so sensitive to social rules that you feel a flash of guilt when you're slightly rude to a stranger at the grocery store. Somewhere between that ancient creature and you, something extraordinary happened. Humans got tamer. Not weaker exactly, tamer. Over time, our species became one of the most cooperative, patient, emotionally controlled animals on the entire planet. Think about what we do every single day without noticing. You can pack a few hundred strangers into a metal tube, seal the doors, lift them 7 miles into the sky, and almost nobody attacks anyone. We share elevators with people we've never met. We stand in silent lines. We hand our babies to friends. We sleep in buildings surrounded by hundreds of strangers we will never even speak to. Try any of that with chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, and you would have a bloodbath before the doors even closed. Wild chimps that meet unfamiliar chimps often try to kill them. Put a few hundred adult male chimps in an airport, and there wouldn't be an airport anymore. For a long time, scientists assumed our calmness was simply intelligence. We got smart. We invented rules. We learned to behave. But over the last few decades, a much stranger idea has slowly taken over. The idea is this: humans didn't only get civilized, humans got domesticated. The same way dogs were domesticated from wolves. The same way cattle were domesticated from wild aurochs. The same way that nervous, snarling foxes can be turned over generations into tail-wagging pets. The only difference is that nobody domesticated us. We did it to ourselves. To understand how bizarre that idea really is, you first have to understand what domestication actually does to an animal. Because it does far more than make a creature friendly. It changes the entire body. Imagine you wanted to turn a wild, aggressive animal into a tame one. You'd probably guess it would take thousands of years, and that you'd have to carefully train every generation. But in 1959, a Soviet scientist named Dmitry Belyaev decided to test something simpler. He took wild silver foxes, the kind that bite and panic when humans come near, and he started breeding them using one rule, and one rule only. Each generation, he kept the calmest foxes, the ones least afraid of people, the ones least likely to snap. He didn't train them. He didn't reward tricks. He simply chose tameness, over and over, generation after generation. What happened next is one of the strangest results in the history of biology. Within just a few decades, the foxes started behaving like dogs. They wagged their tails when humans approached. They whined for attention. They licked hands. But that part, honestly, you might expect. Here's the part nobody saw coming. Their bodies started changing too, even though nobody was breeding them for appearance. Their ears got floppier. Their snouts got shorter. Their skulls became smaller and rounder. Patches of white fur appeared on coats that used to be solid. Their tails began to curl. Some of them even kept puppy-like features deep into adulthood. Think about how weird that is. Belyaev only selected for one thing: a calm personality. But calmness arrived dragging an entire suitcase of physical changes behind it. Floppy ears, white patches, smaller teeth, childlike faces. Scientists noticed this same bundle appears across almost every domesticated species on Earth. Dogs, pigs, cows, rabbits, horses. Compared to their wild ancestors, domesticated animals tend to have smaller skulls, smaller teeth, more juvenile features, patchy coloring, and a calmer temperament. Researchers gave this strange package a name. They call it domestication syndrome. And here is where this story turns from interesting into deeply uncomfortable. Because once scientists had a clear list of what a domesticated animal looks like, somebody eventually did the obvious thing. They looked at us. Compare a modern human skull to the skull of our ancient ancestors, or to our extinct cousins like the Neanderthals, and the differences are impossible to ignore. Their faces were larger and more rugged. Their brow ridges were heavy, jutting out over the eyes like a bony shelf. Their jaws were bigger, their teeth were bigger, their bones were thicker and stronger. Even our own direct ancestors from a few 100,000 years ago were more robust, more heavily built, more intimidating than the average person today. And then, slowly, across many thousands of years, the human face changed. The brow ridge shrank, the face flattened and softened, the jaw got smaller, the teeth got smaller, the skull became rounder, lighter, almost more childlike. Our bodies became less heavily muscled. We even, on average, shrank a little. If you took those exact changes and saw them in any other animal, you would not hesitate for a second. You would say it was being domesticated. The face was being tamed. The body was losing its weapons. And scientists could even put a rough timing on it. When researchers measured hundreds of ancient and modern human skulls, they found that our faces have been getting softer and less rugged for a very long time, with the change becoming especially clear over roughly the last 80,000 years. The heavy brow ridge faded, the face shortened, and strikingly, this softening seems to line up with one of the most important moments in our entire history. Around that same window of time, the archaeological record suddenly explodes. Out of nowhere, there are intricate tools, cave paintings, carved figurines, beads and jewelry, and clear signs of long-distance trade between distant groups. For most of human existence, our ancestors made stone tools that barely changed for hundreds of thousands of years. Then, in a relatively short stretch, human culture detonates. Many scientists think this is not a coincidence. A more tolerant, less aggressive population can do something a violent one simply cannot. They can gather in larger numbers without tearing each other apart. They can trade with strangers instead of attacking them on sight. They can sit together long enough to teach, to copy, and to improve on each other's ideas. Reduced aggression appears to be linked to lower levels of certain hormones, leaving faint traces even in the proportions of the fingers and the shape of the face. In other words, the same calming down that softened our skulls may have been the very thing that let human culture finally catch fire. We didn't get our explosion of art and invention in spite of going soft. We may have gotten it precisely because we did. So scientists were left staring at an almost impossible question. Humans show the physical signature of a domesticated animal. We look tamed, but domestication requires a domesticator. A wolf needs a human to become a dog. A fox needs Believ. There has to be someone on the outside, choosing the calm ones and removing the aggressive ones, generation after generation. So who chose us? There was no farmer standing above early humans, breeding the gentle ones and culling the rest. No outside species civilizing us in a barn. And that left only one explanation. An explanation so strange, it took scientists a long time to take it seriously. If humans were domesticated, and there was no outside domesticator, then humans must have domesticated themselves. We became our own Believ. We became the species that chose tameness, and quietly removed the ones who refused to be tame. The question is how? How does a species selectively breed itself for calmness without anyone planning it? To answer that, a Harvard biologist named Richard Wrangham proposed something both simple and chilling. And it starts by splitting aggression into two completely different things. The first kind is reactive aggression. This is hot aggression. It's the explosion, the bar fight, the sudden rage when someone cuts you off in traffic. It's impulsive, emotional, and immediate. The second kind is proactive aggression. This is cold aggression. It's planned, it's calculated. It's deciding in advance to hurt someone and then carrying it out without losing your temper at all. A premeditated ambush is proactive aggression. A screaming meltdown is reactive aggression. Here is the part that should genuinely surprise you. Humans are extraordinarily low in reactive aggression compared to other apes. We almost never explode into violence in daily life. You can spend years around other people without ever seeing one truly try to kill another in a fit of rage. A chimpanzee group, by contrast, is full of constant, hot violence. Bullying, sudden brutal attacks, charging displays, domination by force. But here's the twist. While humans are unusually calm in the moment, We are unbelievably good at the other kind. Cold, planned, organized violence. War, ambush, execution. No other animal plans destruction the way we do. So humans are simultaneously the gentlest great ape and the most lethal one. And Wrangham's argument is that the first thing, our gentleness, was actually created by the second thing, our talent for planning. Picture an early human group, tens of thousands of years ago. In a chimpanzee troop, the biggest, most aggressive male simply takes what he wants by force. He bullies everyone. He fights anyone who challenges him. Raw physical aggression rules. Now imagine that same kind of violent, domineering bully appearing in a group of early humans. But these humans have something chimpanzees do not have. They have language. With language, the weaker members of the group can do something no chimp can manage. They can talk. They can plan. They can quietly agree, in private, away from the bully, that this man is a problem. They can form an alliance. And one night, working together, a coalition of ordinary individuals can remove a single, powerful tyrant, permanently. In other words, once humans could talk, the biggest, most aggressive, most domineering individuals stopped being the winners. They became targets. The bully who terrorized everyone wasn't feared forever. He was eliminated by everyone else, working together, using planning and cooperation, the very things he lacked. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer groups have repeatedly found exactly this pattern. In these societies, there is often deep hostility toward anyone who tries to dominate others by force. The would-be tyrant gets mocked, then ostracized, and in the most extreme cases, removed by the group entirely. There is a famous example of just how seriously some of these groups guard against arrogance. Among certain hunter-gatherer peoples in southern Africa, when a hunter returns to camp after killing a large animal, the group does something that sounds almost cruel. They insult the meat. They tell the successful hunter that his kill is pathetic, scrawny, a bag of bones barely worth dragging home, even when it is an enormous prize that will feed everyone for days. One anthropologist who lived among them finally asked why they did this. The answer he received was unforgettable. They explained that when a young man kills a lot of meat, he can begin to think of himself as a great man, and to think of everyone else as his inferiors. They could not allow that. So they deliberately cooled his pride, on purpose, to stop him from ever rising above the group. Read that again because it is astonishing. An entire society, with no laws, no courts, and no police, had quietly built a machine for crushing arrogance the moment it appeared. Not through violence, but through a steady, lifelong pressure that whispered a single rule. No one gets to dominate the rest. Now multiply that pressure across thousands of generations, applied again and again to the proudest, pushiest, most domineering individuals in every group. You are watching self-domestication unfold in slow motion, one humbling joke at a time. Now run that across thousands of generations. The most reactively aggressive men, the hotheads who tried to dominate by force, kept getting removed before they could pass on their genes. The calmer, more cooperative, more socially skilled individuals survived and reproduced. Generation after generation, the group itself was doing exactly what Belayev did with his foxes, selecting for tameness, removing the aggressive ones, choosing calm again and again without anyone realizing it was happening. We weren't bred by a farmer. We were bred by each other, slowly, invisibly, through countless decisions to no longer tolerate the cruelest, most violent members among us. We domesticated ourselves by refusing to be ruled by force. And if that idea still feels too strange to believe, nature actually ran the experiment for us, in another species. Meet the bonobo. Bonobos are great apes that look almost identical to chimpanzees. For a long time, people barely distinguished between them, but their behavior could not be more different. Chimpanzees are violent, tense, and dominated by aggressive males. Bonobos are famously peaceful. They resolve conflict with cooperation instead of brutality. They're tolerant, playful, and far less murderous. They are, in a sense, the gentle cousin. And here's the fascinating part. Bonobos also show the physical markers of domestication. Compared to chimpanzees, bonobos have smaller skulls, smaller teeth, and more juvenile features that they keep into adulthood. They behave tamer, and they look tamer. But no human ever domesticated a bonobo. They live wild in the forests of Central Africa. So scientists believe bonobos went through a natural version of self-domestication too. In their environment, food was plentiful and easier to share, so cooperation paid off more than aggression. The calmer, more tolerant individuals thrived. The aggressive ones lost out. Tameness was rewarded, generation after generation, with no human involved at all. Bonobos are living proof that a species can domesticate itself. They are us, on a smaller scale, telling us our own story. But this still leaves one of the deepest mysteries of all. Why does choosing calmness change the body? Why should breeding for a gentle personality also shrink the jaw, soften the face, and scatter white patches into the fur? Tameness is a behavior. Floppy ears are anatomy. Why would they travel together? The leading answer involves something most people have never heard of: tiny cells called neural crest cells. Very early in the development of an embryo, these special cells form near the developing spine and then migrate all over the growing body. And here's the crucial part. Neural crest cells help build an astonishing range of things. They contribute to the adrenal glands, which control the fight or flight response. They help shape the cartilage of the face and jaw. They influence the cells that produce skin and fur color. They affect the development of teeth and ears. Now imagine you selectively breed an animal for calmness. What you're really selecting for is a quieter fight or flight system, a milder fear and aggression response. And that response is partly built by neural crest cells. So when you breed for tameness, you are unintentionally favoring animals whose neural crest cells are slightly less active or migrate slightly less far during development. But those same cells also build the face, the jaw, the teeth, the ears, and the pigment. Turn them down even a little, and the whole package shifts at once. Smaller jaw, smaller teeth, floppier ears, patchy color, a softer, more childlike face. That's the secret link. Domestication syndrome isn't a coincidence. It's a single developmental thread. Pull on the tameness end, and the face quietly changes on the other side. Belyayev never knew this. He thought he was only choosing calm foxes, but he was reaching deep into the embryo and turning a developmental dial that controlled far more than behavior. And humans appear to have turned that same dial on ourselves for tens of thousands of years. Once you see it, the consequences of self-domestication are everywhere in what makes us human. Because reducing our aggression didn't just make us calmer, it unlocked something enormous: tolerance. The ability to be near each other without fighting. And tolerance is the soil that everything else grew in. Look at your own eyes in a mirror. Around your colored iris is a large area of bright white. Now look at the eyes of almost any other primate. Their visible eye is dark, hiding the direction of their gaze. Humans are the only primates with bright white surrounding the iris, which means everyone around you can instantly see exactly where you're looking. In a violent, suspicious species, that would be a deadly weakness. Your enemies would always know your focus. But in a tame, cooperative species, visible eyes are a superpower. We can follow each other's gaze, share attention, point at things together with just a glance. Cooperation requires trust. And our self-domestication made us trusting enough to wear our attention right on our faces. Look closer, and you'll find other weapons we quietly surrendered. Most male primates carry large, dagger-like canine teeth used to threaten and slash at rivals. Ours shrank into the small, blunt canines sitting in your mouth right now. Barely weapons at all. We traded fangs for words and threats for negotiation. It may also be why human childhood lasts so absurdly long. We are born helpless and stay dependent for over a decade. That only works in a species patient and tolerant enough to spend years gently raising children together, often with help from grandparents, siblings, and neighbors. A hot-tempered, hyper-aggressive species could never manage that level of long, cooperative, low-violence childcare. Our tameness bought us the one thing our giant brains needed most: time. Time to learn, time to teach, time to pass culture from one generation to the next. But there is a shadow over all of this. A dark, uncomfortable shadow that we cannot look away from. Because remember, we became low in reactive aggression. The hot kind. The kind that explodes in the moment. We did not become low in proactive aggression, the cold kind, the planned kind. In fact, the very same trait that tamed us, our talent for cooperation and planning, is exactly what makes us the most organized killers in the history of life on Earth. The same coalition building that once removed a single tyrant from a small group is the same skill that builds armies. We are gentle to the person beside us and capable of planning the destruction of millions of strangers. We rarely snap in rage, yet we invented organized warfare, genocide, and weapons that can end civilizations. Wrangham called this the goodness paradox. We are, at the same time, one of the kindest and one of the cruelest species ever to exist. Both halves came from the same source. We tamed our hot violence by mastering our cold violence. So the next time you sit quietly in a crowded room full of strangers, every one of them a powerful animal capable of harm, and absolutely nothing happens, understand what you're actually witnessing. You are seeing the result of tens of thousands of years of self-domestication. A species that slowly, generation by generation, chose calm over cruelty and removed the ones who chose otherwise. You are descended from the survivors of that long, quiet filtering. Not the strongest, not the most violent, the most tolerable. The ones who could live alongside others without being cast out. The ones the group decided to keep. Your patience, your guilt, your instinct to cooperate, your ability to sit peacefully next to people you've never met. None of that is an accident. It was carved into you across thousands of generations by ancestors who decided over and over that they would no longer be ruled by the cruelest among them. We like to imagine humans tamed the world, tamed the wolf into the dog, tamed the wild ox into cattle, tamed the land into farms and the rivers into power. But the strangest truth is the one staring back at you in the mirror. Long before we ever tamed a single animal, we had already done something far more astonishing and far more quiet. We tamed ourselves.